the person I think who has possibly fell asleep at the wheel and let the position it's got to is the coach.
Steve, Barney, thank you both for being with us. Here we go again with you do all sports, Barney, but you only seem to join us on this podcast for depressing cricket chat at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I specialise in actually all depressing chat. But depressing cricket chat is a particularly good one.
And do you know what? Just on that, before we get onto England and what they've done and what they are going to do, I said this earlier this week on the pod. I genuinely, at 52 years old, in all my time of watching cricket, I cannot remember a more generally, not just because England have lost, but a more generally, Barney, miserable Ashes series. It's just disappointed on so many levels.
Yeah, I mean, there are good reasons for that. England have underachieved. Australia were vulnerable. I mean, they have brilliant bowling attack, but they were vulnerable in other ways. And they missed some kind of all-time players. And it feels like a chance missed because that's a talented England team. I also think there's something unique about this Ashes tour. They really haven't played much cricket. I worked it out just now. I think it's been 17 days in about 67 days in Australia. But it's been relentless. It's been the first really online tour. I feel like it's been constant. It's this terminally online experience of constant chat, constant non-events, constant stuff at Noosa that we're supposed to get worried about. And that, I think, has actually drained the players in a way they didn't expect. They've talked a lot about how the pressure of being in Australia. I don't know if the pressure is really that bad. Is it as bad as being a footballer? They don't play that much cricket. But it's a really hard place to be anywhere in the modern world at the moment. And I feel that's really affected and got to some of the players on this tour.
I also, Steve, the last time Barney was on, he was on with Bumble, and we were talking about the beauty of cricket if the administrators realised that different people can like different things and get different things out of the sport. And as a lover, I love all the formats, but when it comes to Test cricket, I want to love that format. I want the ebb and flow of 4 or 5 days. I want the nuances of spin. I want the tactics. I want an afternoon session to drift if that's the case. And I do genuinely feel like if you love Test cricket, you've kind of been robbed of that.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I said before this Test series started, because it was so eagerly awaited, and because I felt, all the noise that Bazball might have had a chance in Australia, and Australia is a difficult place to tour. For me, this Test series was gonna, I think, put franchise cricket on the back burner and really, hopefully, put it, not an end to it, because you're never ever going to put an end to franchise cricket, but the noise that franchise cricket and the money that's in the game and where it's deviating towards, I thought, right, this could be the one Test match series that bangs its fist on the table and goes, right, this is why we love Test cricket, because Stokes' team's going to go to Australia and really have a red-hot go against an Australian side, which I thought was there for the taking. But unfortunately, when you only have 17 days cricket, the days off in between are the ones that put pressure on you as a player, because the negativity around it has just been relentless because of the mistakes England have made. However you want to dress it up, England have made a huge amount of mistakes to get themselves in a position where they've lost 4-1, and they've had huge amount of pressure on them because of the cricket that they've played. But going into the series right at the very start, I thought, you know what, ILT20's going on, the IPL auction's going on, Big Bash is going on, horizon of the IPL. This Test series is going to put Test match cricket back on the map, and everybody's going to want to be a Test match cricketer again. And unfortunately, it didn't happen.
I don't know, Barney, if is there a sense of regret in Australia, even though they've won 4-1, or is that a particularly daft question?
No, there is a sense of regret. People in this country love Test cricket. It's totally tied into their summer. It's basically their Christmas. and they feel really let down. They felt angry. I mean, that's why we had this extraordinary theatre of the pitch at the MCG with the groundsman or the curator having a kind of McCarthyite inquisition on the steps of the MCG. It was like they were going to dunk him as a witch because he didn't mow the lawn properly. They were really disappointed. Cricket Australia lost a lot of money, but in Australia, cricket is the national summer sport. It's massive, and they love Test cricket. They don't really care about the short form stuff, even though they know it's important. And it's been a real disappointment for them. That I think a lot of the usual hostility towards England has also just turned into frustration. But this tour didn't really have a chance. Like we're talking, like Harmy's talking about what we all want for Test cricket to kind of reassert itself, or what most people who like cricket want. And that battle's kind of already been lost. This tour was this isolated thing in the middle of endless commitments. They didn't practice properly because they had to go and play a white ball tour in New Zealand, which was they then didn't even prepare properly for that. You can't cut those corners. England might well have still lost, even if they had done the preparation. But when you don't do the preparation, it just falls to pieces. The bowlers didn't look match fit, didn't look to have any rhythm. They had that one really adrenal day where everybody bowled really well in Perth, and that was incredibly misleading because after that they just didn't look ready for it. And you have to prepare for this form of the game. It's really unforgiving. You have to be ready in so many ways. Australia's bowlers all played at least three Shield games coming into it. They prepared properly and normally. I think it just made a huge difference. It's really prosaic, but it just comes down to that. And England were not prepared, ready to commit to actually doing that, and which might have displeased some of the players, might have interrupted some of their scheduling, but they kind of got what they deserved.
Off the back of that then, and there are so many different facets to England, as we come on to England now, and where they've gone wrong and what they can do better, let's deal with the bowling side of things first, Steve, and the fact that so many of them appear to be wrapped in cotton wool the majority of the time. And I appreciate, look, Jofra Archer and Mark Wood may be slightly different because of injuries, but there have been times over the course of a domestic season where it appears to be that the one thing England don't want their bowlers to do is bowl.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't got enough time for that. Chappers, you've not got enough time for that to get me off my soapbox. I am an old school fast bowler who, unfortunately, until doomsday, the only way you can get fit for Test match cricket, there's a clue in the title. It's Test match cricket. It's 5 days long. If you want to be a successful side, your bowlers are going to be in the field and probably cover the distances between 40 and 50 kilometres a Test match. You're going to have to bowl 45 overs, 50 overs in a Test match if you want to win, because good sides bowl a lot because they're constantly on top and asking questions of the opposition, making teams follow on, all this stuff. You need to be a bowler. You can't do that by just. A marathon runner doesn't train by running 100-meter sprints, and as much as it might not be fashionable, I think there's a lot of layers you can take into this. The sports science element of cricket now, of all sports now, is so detailed, it's ridiculous. And you're getting people who are, the tail's wagging the dog a little bit. This is something I've said throughout the summer, that when somebody is coming to tell you that you're in a red zone, what is a red zone? You're in a red zone, your body's this and your body's that because you've got a GPS on, and he's telling you not to bowl. You get to tea time, and it's 40 degrees, and it's flat in Adelaide. You can't wave to the physio and say, by the way, you told me I'm in the red zone. Can I come off now? It doesn't happen. You have to be ready for it and train for it. And this is where a little bit sort of where I'll stick up for Jofra, is that when they talk about the puller and he bowled at 129, 130 at the end of a day, you could see his body wasn't conditioned to bowl his fourth and fifth spell at the back end of a day, where England, it's not just England, it's a lot of teams around the world. When you're playing Test match cricket and you're a fast bowler, your body needs to be pushed to an endurance limit over 5 Test matches. And unfortunately, I don't think the right people are getting bowlers prepared to bowl for that length of time. I think it's people who haven't done it, who are having an influence now in the game, which I think is maybe causing a little bit of a problem, because bowling coaches are working on the technical aspects of it, and a fitness coach is trying to get you fit. There's only one way you can get fit for bowling, especially a test match, and that's to have volume. If you want to have repetition, the repetition breeds confidence. The confidence, the bowling side of it, all that comes. Unfortunately, if you get to spell 3 and spell 4 and spell 5, and you're 10 kilometers down, the batter will then take you down, and then the confidence element comes to it. So it's a vicious circle.
And also the comparison, Barney, is, Australia have an attack with about an average age of 43, and they are metronomic and cause problems. And the other question that came in the bowlers' preparation was, England decided far out that pace was going to be their tactic here, when a lot of people tell me that actually pace hasn't been successful in a lot of cricket in Australia for a while. It's more not the dibbly dobblers, but taking a little bit off it and making it move, and they're the bowlers that have caused the main problem.
I've seen the briefing document that this level of decision making is based on. This was actually given to county coaches by England's hierarchy as this is what we want, and it's so utterly basic in what it says. Basically, they looked at who are the most successful bowlers. Well, it's Kagiso Rabada, it's Bumrah. Okay, so you got to bowl 87 miles an hour on this length consistently. That's what we want. Do that, with no actual analysis of, okay, what about conditions? What do we actually have? What can we develop in this country? Rob Key's very sensitive about the fact that there's a clips that circulates of him saying county cricket's no good because it produced bowlers in the low 80s with the keeper stood up to the stumps. And then England go ahead and lose a test. I think it was in Brisbane that Nisa had the keeper stood up to the stumps and was bowling exactly that. And he made a big point that no, those guys are hitting the pitch hard. It's totally different. They're not floating it out. I mean, I just feel that the level of analysis there is so basic. If you presented that to a CEO of a company and said, look, we're going to go into this market based on these incredibly basic facts that we haven't properly analysed, they'd laugh you out of the room. I also felt really sorry for Matt Potts in this test, who basically hadn't bowled in a proper Red Bull game since September, and was then told to go out at the SCG, and he's the 8th choice seamer. He's still standing. To his credit, he just kept running in. He actually improved. But how do we possibly expect this guy, who is a good, skillful bowler, to be able to compete at that level and to find his length immediately? It could have been a really crushing experience for him, but he seemed kind of okay at the end. But that was kind of horrible, and it felt like it wasn't necessary as well. There hadn't been enough care in his preparation at all.
You have to balance it out, Chappers, as well, that the balance of your attack. We seem to have a one-size-fits-all, right? We need 90-mile-an-hour bowlers. Yeah. That hits the deck hard and coming from a tall release point. Like Barney said, the level of detail of what we want as a bowling unit. But they've got to bowl together. You've got Josh Tongue and Bryden Carse, who probably shouldn't play in the same side because they've got, their characteristics are very, very similar. You look at the teams around the world. You mentioned there Kagiso Rabada. You look at Mitch Starc. The best bowling attack that's going around is the Australian one. Got a right arm seamer who hits the deck hard. We've got a left arm swing bowler who's developed a wobble ball over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, who's made himself unbelievable now in Mitchell Starc. And you've got Pat Cummins, Josh Hazelwood, Pat Cummins, who are different types of right arm seamers from different sort of release points. But it's a balanced attack, and you've got a spin bowler who has got the experience then and now to know, a bit like Graham Swan that we had, can control the game in the first half and win the game in the second half of a test contest. But again, it comes back, and if you want to flip it back, because it'll always come back to the preparation side. England have gone to Australia without Paul Collingwood, who is a fitness coach, a fielding coach, more fielding side, a batting and a fielding side, has been there for quite a while. England dropped 17 catches. He wasn't there in the summer. England dropped 18 catches. England didn't employ anybody else to go with them. We've gone with 2 or 3 less coaches. Our bowling coach disappeared and sat on a bench in the ILT 20 for 5 test matches, and we bring in David Saker, who's a good man, who didn't really know these bowlers, and we carried a Marcus Trescothick, an opening batter, and as a batting coach, we didn't have a spare opening batter on the tour, and we had Jacob Bethell, Brendon McCullum's best mate, as a spin bowling coach, and we didn't play a spinner for 5 test matches. So all in all, it just threw the whole thing into a melting pot. I mean, Australia didn't have to work that hard to beat England in this trip.
So, and I'd have loved to have been those county cricket directors who got that briefing document of we need to find bowlers like Jasprit Brummer. It's like, blimey, I mean, he's unique. How on earth can you use him as an example of what you need to find? Nobody could bowl like Brummer. What happens now then for you, Steve, in the sense of Ashes tours are notorious for they go wrong and immediately we have a review and everything gets thrown out and we start again. I go back to a Michael Vaughan comment about, I think after England had lost in Australia in 2003, and he said actually the final test in Sydney gave him a really good idea of what he needed before the summer of 2005, and actually what happened in Australia gave him a really good plan and actually helped him. So it can't be throw everybody out, can it? It has to be learning, doesn't it?
I mean it has to. I think the one thing what I'll say about this whole tour is it's always an Ashes tour is about raw emotion. So that has to be dampened down, and it has to be adults in a room, chat about what's gone wrong, could we prevented things, everything that goes with that. Typical, a debrief of where this series has gone. The one for me that's vulnerable, or should be vulnerable, is the coach. He sets the tone, sets the message. He's the one that should have every stone unturned to make sure that the bump in the road that always comes in a 5-match series, we have enough to combat that. Now, I don't think we did have that. The captain, for me, I can't see a England team, while Ben Stokes is in the 1 to 11, where he's not captain. And yes, he might have made mistakes, but for me, he should still be captain. I go back to the first 2 years of this regime, and the only thing that's keeping me from sort of giving McCullum a chance is that we were 1 win from 17. We changed the narrative of English cricket, and everything for me was looking so good. What's happened in that 18 months? Have we got blind faith in the players who weren't good enough? That needs to possibly change. Have we got complacent in our methods and mentality? All these questions for me need to be answered, and I think Brendon in the first 2 years has deserved the chance to think whether he can be the person that possibly changes to make England go better in the next cycle of Ashes cycle, because he's contracted till the end of the next Ashes. And I think Rob Key does the same. I think Kesey's put a lot of good work in when it comes to the pathway. We've got some exciting young cricketers, but at the minute they're very, very young. They're very, very talented. What are they being taught? And this is where the next phase comes through. So I think Rob Key, he holds his job for that, because there's a lot of things that go behind the scenes that I think in his tenureship over 3.5 years has gone well for England. But the person I think who has possibly fell asleep at the wheel and let the position it's got to is the coach. And it's whether we feel as though it's the right thing for him to carry on if he can rectify the mistakes, because he's owned up and said we've made mistakes. Is he man enough to go and put them mistakes right, or big enough to put them right, or good enough as a coach to put them right? That's got to be for the bosses at the top.
You wonder, Barney, don't you, whether they need people to challenge them across the management level,
yeah,
or more pertinently, whether they will allow people to challenge.
That's the problem.
Yeah, Key and McCullum's not a good double act. You've got two no details people. I think Rob Key is a really interesting bloke and has his heart entirely in the right place and understands the game, but he's not a details man. and he needs somebody to help him in that sense. Too many things have been too slack, and when you combine that with, I mean, McCullum's not a learning kind of guy. That's the USP. He's authentic. He's just himself. To ask him to learn, change, accept guidance, I just don't see how that works. You've employed him for the whole point that he pairs things back. If you then try to say we want Baz with brains, I don't know what that is. I don't know if that exists, if that's actually a thing. I have a lot of sympathy for Rocky, and he's very good at explaining what went wrong under his watch. Well, that doesn't mean it didn't go wrong. And there does have to be accountability. One of the big problems of English cricket, and indeed English society, is the sense of that there isn't accountability in power. And while you don't change things by getting rid of the person at the top, and it would leave a huge hole, you do have to feel that there is accountability and that there will be consequences. Because it's part of the problem with this entire regime. It's been very loose. And it seems fine not to... we couldn't find a bouncy pitch in Australia to warm up in. We didn't think people needed to see a pink ball until they actually played a pink ball test. These are terrible decisions. And somehow we're saying, well, there shouldn't be accountability for that. I think that there should. And I agree with Steve that probably McCullum, if they can afford to get rid of him, is the one who looks most vulnerable.
The World T20 is massive. Sorry, Chappers. The World T20 is massive. He's got that to... There's nothing's going to change, and nothing should change until the World T20. If England go and win the World T20, then I think Brendon buys a
But that would be really misleading. McCullum is not a good white ball coach. His record is terrible. And
that could be the final nil.
Anyone can win a T20 competition. You can get to the semi-finals almost by accident, and then you have a couple of days. It would actually be misleading for England to win that, because it would suggest some kind of method is being put in place that's useful. Ideally, they would perform to their level there. But if they win it, I don't think it changes anything.
Is Jacob Bethell the biggest positive from the fifth test? And I don't mean because he got the runs, but I'm intrigued what you both think about the theory that if he'd come in the first two tests, he might not have played the same way as he did in the fifth test, i.e. England behind the scenes have heard what's been going on and thought, well, you can't just go out there and whack it.
Well, I mean, obviously all ifs, buts and maybes when it comes to trying to predict something like that. But there's a talented individual there. I think what I've always...
But it was a very talented innings, wasn't it, Steve?
It was
Atherton wrote, he reminded him of David Gower in Sydney when Atherton was at the other end. It wasn't a white ball innings with a red ball is the point, and therefore, bizarrely, was he given more leeway to be more circumspect with the series being where it was at than if he had started the series?
Yeah, I think what you'll find, a couple of things in this. I think what you'll find is Brendon McCullum will say, Bazball was a narrative built by the media, and my way of thinking about the game is to try and put pressure on the bowlers and assess the risks that need to be taken and try and be positive. And Jacob Bethell, I think, did that throughout his innings. I think he absorbed the game when the respect of the bowler was needed. He put away the bad ball. He looked comfortable in defence. He had an idea where his off stump was. All these things that I think Brendon McCullum is probably trying to say to his players, this is where I want you to play. And, when you say Bazball with brains, is it the players that haven't got the brains? I think there's something in that as well. So the Jacob Bethell innings, when he went out there in Sydney on a good surface, I think what I took away from it is when I heard him speak for 3 days afterwards, because he did the media more or less 3 days in a row. The innings was I thought was an educator. It was an innings by somebody who was a little bit older than his years, and I thought the way he spoke was a lot older than his years. And when ECB took some criticism for making him captain in Ireland, you can now see why they did that, because there's a character here who thinks quite in depth about his game and the way the game needs to be played. So that's what I took away from Jacob Bethell's innings in Sydney, because he wouldn't be playing for England if he wasn't talented. And I think the noise around him at a young age, you have to have the natural given talent. But the one thing we've been asking for is Bazball with brains. And I think what we've seen in that innings from Jacob Bethell was exactly that.
Yeah, I think they blinked a bit on him after the New Zealand tour last year, and there was an idea that he was going to come in at the start of the English summer after he'd been at the IPL, and he would have been number 3. But they made a close call and kept Ollie Pope, basically on the back of scoring a double. I think it was double 100 against Zimbabwe, which is a bit odd because they say county cricket runs don't matter, but Zimbabwe runs do, apparently. So you could have slotted him into the team there. And he had a kind of wasted summer. He followed the test team around, he didn't play much. And there was a fear that that might have been a break on his progress, because obviously as a young man, you need to play a lot. But luckily, he is just hyper-talented and a sort of self-coaching player. He talked to the press about how he'd made some technical changes in his game in the course of this tour, and that he didn't feel he was ready earlier in the series. But he worked on some stuff he watched. He said watching Boland bowl was an education. And when you hear someone saying that, you kind of think, okay, he's kind of bailed them out in a way by not being ruined by the fact that he just didn't get to play for a summer. And I felt he was a bit mishandled. But he's so good and he's so smart. You get entirely what they've seen in him. And the great thing about Test cricket is you watch someone do that and you just want to see them do it again and again. You look forward to 20 years of that, which is not something I ever get from white ball cricket at all. I don't want to see someone hitting a 6 4,000 times. But that is just like, I want to see this on different surfaces, different countries. Give me 20 years of that, Jacob. And also, people are already saying, well, we've got a future England captain there because he's so smart and he just seems to be able to cope with pressure.
Yeah, but then we're doing what we always do, aren't we? There, immediately, Barney anointing them as the next England captain or the next England captain but one, and I completely agree with it, because I know he spoke brilliantly, he played beautifully. Steve mentioned the island stuff, but at the same time there is an element, for God's sake, just let him.
Succession planning makes sense. They've made him white ball captain because they think he can develop his skills as a captain. I think it makes a lot of sense. He's just scored 150 at the SCG. It's not exactly a punt. The people in the ground, there were so many Australian ex-pros who Steve would know, people like Brett Lee, just glowing over this guy, even when he was on 30, saying he's the real deal, this is good. I think he will be able to cope with the likes of me saying, I reckon he looks pretty good.
Yeah, and I mean,
in a dingy hotel room in Sydney.
And he's, and I think to sort of carry on from that, you can see a player, a player in all sports. We've all been watching somebody for the first time, and within 15, 20 seconds, this kid can play. And you get that with Jacob, with the amount of time he's got. Michael Vaughan, you mentioned that 2002-3 trip a little bit earlier, Chappers. He left Australia, on the crest of a wave, best batter in the world. Now, Jacob's nowhere near that, but he's come off the back of 100, given so much confidence. 2.5 years later, Michael Vaughan was captain of England. So, there is a good tour to Australia can give a player a huge amount of confidence, and fingers crossed for England. I'm not saying he's going to be the best player in the world. I'm not saying he's going to be England captain for the next 10 years, but he's given himself the best chance, and he actually sounds like as though he's got a very, very good headpiece on him.
We've ended on a positive then, haven't we? After all of that, we've ended on a positive.
Yeah, no. I mean, no. There's nothing positive ever about getting beat off Australia. There's a frustration element for me that what could have been, but in the cold light of day, England have been probably beaten by about 3 or 4 people. That's it. That's
I do think they'll win the home Ashes though in a year and a half. I think Australia are going to have to replace a lot of people, and England are good in home conditions. So
I still think Australia will bring. I still think they'll come. I still think Cummins will come. I still think Stark will come. Lyon might come. Smith will come. Head will be there. The interesting bit now is we're about to embark on 18 months of English cricket being told not to take Australians for that summer as overseas players to give them practice for it. So yeah, watch this space.
Here we go again. Right, thank you very much, Steve. Thank
Pleasure.
you, Barney. Sleep well in Sydney. Thank you. See you both soon.
The Sports Agents
with Gabby Logan and Mark Chapman.